Gandhi as an apostle of non-violence, after his very assassination, if his followers go on a rampage and kill all the Brahmins of Maharashtra for a crime they did not commit, did they really understand Gandhi's message of non-violence? In the Bhagavad Gita, you have Krishna himself saying to Arjuna that even if your opponent is your father, your uncle, your guru, your cousin or whoever, if that person is on the path of adharma, the Hindu philosophy is get rid of him.
Why is that there was always friction between Gandhi, Nehru and Savarkar? Not so popular guy, also clashing with the ideologies of Gandhi, because of which it was like a house on fire combination. And is that how, I mean, we understand any surprising and emotional moments that you encountered while you were writing the book?
In 10-15 years, the early recording was completely dominated by women. And the male musicians then saw what this was doing to their lives. These people are earning so much. They're becoming so popular. Their records are selling like hotcakes. So then the men do what they do. They come and displace the women. There are about 15,000 gramophone records that we have saved. From Chor Bazaars in Avenue Road to Moor Market in Chennai to Dharamtala Mosque area in Calcutta to Chandni Chowk in Delhi, all kinds of places. One believes that there is God, the other believes there is no God. I think that truth is in the middle, and I always, whether it comes to history, whether it comes to my own spiritual outlook to life, I would like to be in this fuzzy logic in the middle.
Today on Just Curious, if you have read the book Savarkar series, a lot of your doubts are going to be answered. Well, if you're a fan of Indian classical music and the gramophone, the book written by this man, you already know who I'm talking about. Now, if you want to dig into the history, letting your curiosities run into the times of Tipu Sultan or even our pre-freedom movement, a lot of personalities, be it Savarkar, be it Mahatma Gandhi, all your curiosities are going to be quenched today, because in the studio here I have the honor to host one Mr. Vikram Sampath. Vikramji, a man with 10 books to his credit, a PhD holder, Sahitya Academy awardee, and a historian. Lastly, a curious soul, clearly. Welcome to Just Curious, sir. How are we?
Thank you, Rashmi. It's such a pleasure to be here. I think we've been trying this for a long time. Finally, the stars had to meet and align.
Yes, the stars had to align. Obviously, I think a counter to this would be, I wanted to put this dialogue, probably I would have met Tipu Sultan, but meeting you would have been, like meeting you was tough, just on a lighter note. But having said this, anybody who is busy, I always wonder how they, actually respect time. So with that regard, I totally can understand your schedule. And firstly, Vikram, how are you and where are you coming from?
It's been a relentless travel. In this summer months of, scorching heat everywhere. Almost every week I need to travel. So I've just returned from Ayodhya and from there to Bhubaneswar, back to Bangalore. So it's been 3 north, east, and then back to the city I love, the city I grew up in, which is Namma Uru. Bengaluru.
So a lot of our non-Kannada speaking crowd who have tuned in to us, I'm sure they are introduced to you through your books and your work. And today, our dear Kannadigas who always celebrate you as, our Karnataka's boy or our Bangalore boy will always probably celebrate you today or would know you better, understanding who you are as a person. And that's where I want to start. Your pen has done its job, and now we just want to see the mind behind the pen. So firstly, talking about your mind, how do you keep your mind busy and how do you handle your mind, Vikram?
No, I think that's a very good question to start with. I think when so many ideas keep brewing, it's never a silent time for the brain, at least. I think it's on an overthinking mode all the time. I already have the next 10 projects, I think, already set in my mind as to what I'll be doing for several years moving forward. But to keep the mind in order, I rely on a lot of spiritual practices. And I think that has been the way of life for a very long time. And I think that helps, meditation and a few other spiritual practices that I follow.
Sorry, can we get, what do you call, too nosy into what these other spiritual practices are?
Well, no, I'm into Devi worship and Sri
Ah,
Vidya sadhana. So that and meditation. I have a guru in Delhi, in Ghaziabad to be more precise, Sakshi Shri Maharaj. So he teaches me the whole process of meditation, how to keep the mind in control, and also increase thereby, I think, the productivity of the mind, because the mind is a double-edged sword. Once it's racing so fast, either it can make or it can break you. So how to harness its power in a manner that leads you on the path that you want it to, that's very important. And I think that's where a lot of creative people, artists, writers, because we're constantly in this process of creation, and creation comes out of chaos. The churning of the ocean leads to the coming of the nectar. So while that happens, you also have a lot of poison coming out. So you need your inner Shiva somewhere to drink all that and annul its effect, so that it can only be channeled to the good part of what you need to bring out for yourself and for society.
beautifully put. So, who's the inner Shiva here? I mean, metaphorically, is that the mind's sadhana wherein it can think rationally? Is it the subconscious mind that you're talking about?
Yes, I think everything is within us. I think I'm increasingly beginning to believe that whatever power we have, it's the power of our thoughts. It's a power that we make. Whether man has made God or God has made man. As I said, I came back from Ayodhya, and it was a very emotional moment to be there at the Ram Lalla temple. And early in the morning, we went for darshan. Of course, we had some special darshan to stand by the side. Some of the perks of being known, as you would also experience that in especially crowded temples. At
Yes.
least you're not having to stand in those long queues.
Right.
But while I was standing there, I mean, and gazing at the deity sculpted by someone from our state, Arun,
Right.
and then just the chants of all the people. It was 7 in the morning, and people were thronging there in those long queues, and the exhilaration and the shouts of ecstasy of Jai Shri Ram and Sita Ram and calling him out. That really did something to me. That here is a deity for whom our civilization has fought for 500 years to reclaim him and bring him, so to say, to this place. And today it is the faith of all these people. It was almost like a civilizational burden that they were all carrying, and all of us collectively carrying, in witnessing that deity. So did we impart that deity with the divinity? Is it our Shraddha, our faith, that imbued in what would have otherwise been a piece of stone with so much of divinity to draw people from all over to come and see it, witness it, give darshan. So increasingly, I think all the power is within us, and we need to understand that the power of our thoughts, the power of the much misused word today of manifestation, the law of attraction, all kinds of things that people talk about. But I think everything is within you. The God, the anti-God, all forces, and how you harness and channel that in the right direction, I think is also completely in your hands.
I think this is what even Adi Shankaracharya said, Aham Brahmasmi.
Yes. Yeah.
So here we are, a nation who has access to such ancient wisdom, yet being sandwiched with the Western philosophies today. And together we are trying to make sense of things. How your last few days looked like. You just did throw some light on how your travels and all of that happened. What actually got you to Ayodhya, if I may ask?
There was a literature festival there. So these days, I think writers are more of performers than actually writers.
Yeah.
You're talking more than you're writing, which is sadly the way the world is today. I always wonder, R.K. Narayan, whom again from our Mysore, who lived there. We all read his books, whether it is Swami and Friends and Mr. Sampath, and we had Malgudi Days adaptation by Shankar Nag from his work. we all read his work, but today if R.K. Narayan were alive and he just walked past us, none of us would recognize him, because then the writer was not so important. His or her writing was much more important. Today, even when I go to these lit fests or when I'm met at airports and so on, everyone says, "Sir, we have heard you." I said, "Have you? We are yet to read your books. We have heard you on a podcast." So the podcast everyone would have heard, or some YouTube this thing, but not read the works of writers, which is a very sad part. But it's okay. At least if the message is being conveyed through this medium, which is wonderful, which breaks all the stereotypes, all the elitist control of mainstream media, and brings knowledge, information, and people to the masses. Nothing like that. But for writers, it becomes, as I said, literature festivals, podcasts, interviews, the performative aspect of a writer is so much more than the written part. So, which is a little bit of a dichotomy, but you have to accept it as long as it's working in your advantage. It's perfectly
Absolutely.
fine.
As long as a message is conveyed,
Correct.
as long as the books are now taken to people as a sampler through these podcasts,
Correct.
why not?
Yeah, it may instigate some curiosity, just curious, some curiosity and interest in that subject or the person's work to read him or her more. Then I think that's how it works also. Not everyone who tunes in probably ends up reading it, but 10% of the message is at least conveyed, which is fine.
True that. So your profile has multiple things to it. One is you being an author. Secondly, you author books which are mostly about history,
Yes.
largely. And you are a PhD holder yourself, and you're a Sahitya Academy awardee. So with these feathers in your cap already, today, I mean, one question that I have been wanting to ask ever since you came here is, with so much research, with so much happening, how do you remember all these things? Where does the archive store all of this? I mean,
How I wish I knew. Yeah. Even in my talks and so on, everyone asks, "Where do you remember?" I really don't know. I don't go prepared for any of my talks or an interview or anything. Whatever necessary information comes in from whichever register, I have no clue. It is just, and I think somewhere, considering I'm also trained in classical music, Carnatic classical music, so Manodharma Sangeeta, so improvisation, depending on the audience, the alap
question.
also can change.
So do you work on certain things to keep your memory intact?
Nothing particularly. I think I've just been a little lucky, I guess. Though in school, honestly, I hated history as a subject. It's quite in school in Bangalore where I studied. History was the subject where I think the maximum punishment, if I've got in any subject, it was history, because I just couldn't memorize who succeeded whom and which year which battle was fought, who was whose wife and husband, and all these. Otherwise, what a young person would think is useless details. But today, that's become my
What an
occupation.
irony. Yeah, I know. It's like, so tell me one thing. How did you vision your life to be as a teenager or your early days? Because, like I said, you've done MBA in finance, PhD in music, history from University of Queensland. You're the founder of Bangalore Literature Festival, and you also served as a senior fellow at Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, recognized as an Eisenhower and Aspen for Global Fellow. Sorry, we are all lay humans here. But what does Aspen and Eisenhower mean?
So these are fellowships, international fellowships run largely from America. For Aspen Global Leadership is people from varied fields of life who have achieved something. It's more of honing those leadership skills. Eisenhower was a more compelling fellowship where one person is selected from every country to represent that country, and we are a cohort. Every year there's a new batch. So cohort of people who are invited to America to interact with people there, to create networks there and collaborations for work. So I had also created an archive called the Archive of Indian Music, which is perhaps India's first digital sound archive for vintage gramophone recordings of the country, going back to 1902 when the first recording was made in India. So as part of the Eisenhower Fellowship, I also toured several music archives in the US and in universities there to create partnerships and collaborations for my archive with those people. So these are just platforms which bring so-called, meritorious people together. Yeah.
So, with a journey like this, and further, you have popular books like My Name is Gauhar Jaan, Voice of the Veena, Savarkar's 2 volumes of books, and then Brave Hearts of Bharat, Waiting for Shiva, Tipu Sultan. Hence, my first question about your early days: what did look at your future to be?
I don't think I even look at it now.
Always a person who goes with the flow.
Serendipity. Yeah, serendipity is the leitmotif of my life, which is happy accidents.
Seriously.
Yeah, I've never, as I said, I was a person who did not like history while
History.
growing up.
What changed?
A lot, and thanks to Tipu Sultan. So if you remember, I don't know, there was in Doordarshan, there was a serial called The Sword of Tipu Sultan those days, which Sanjay Khan was producing and acting in the lead. And if you remember in that, to show Tipu and his father Hyder Ali, who were actually usurpers of the throne of Mysore from the Wodeyars, the Maharaja and Maharani of Mysore were shown in a very, very poor light. The Maharaja Immadi Krishnaraja Wadeyar, he was shown like this, fat, obese buffoon who was dancing with the court dancer, very effeminate and so on. And this Maharani Lakshmi Ammanni, the very sagacious Maharani of Mysore, she was shown like one scheming vamp from one of those Ekta Kapoor serials, always, conspiring, conniving against Tipu. And there were lots of protests in different parts of southern Karnataka, which was part of the erstwhile Mysore princely state. And if you remember the studio, the premier studio where it was being shot at in Mysore, that also caught fire.
Oh, yeah.
Sanjay Khan's face had got burnt, and a lot of Kannada media had said this is the curse of the Wodeyar, or Shrapa. That's why they've got this misfortune befallen on them. And as a young boy who was 12, 13 then, and actually with no connection that way to Mysore, my family, I'm half a Tamilian and half a Maharashtrian. We've just settled down in Bangalore, but no connection to Mysore. I don't know what happened that I said I need to find out the truth behind this one king and queen who were shown in a poor light.
Polite, right.
And that ensured that not only me, but it became a family project. Papa, my father, my mother, my ajji, all of them, every vacation meant going to Mysore, meeting members of the royal family, some old historians, archivists, old timers there, just gathering information for the joy of discovery. It was never with the intention that one day this will become a book or I'll become a historian, because that was not at all an aspirational goal to become a, follow a subject which I didn't like in school. So this went on, and this madness carried on for 10 years, not 1 or 2. So some things are just destiny, serendipitous destiny. And from that one king and queen, the interest soon, expanded to the entire dynasty, and they ruled for 600 years, the Wodeyars, from 1399, when the dynasty was formed by Yaduraya, till the time of independence with Jayachamraj Wodeyar as the last king. And after those 10 years, I realized that there was not a single book that was written on them in the modern times which covered this entire time span. The political history, social, economic and cultural history of Mysore. And in telling that, it is not just a story of the Wodeyars of Mysore, it's also the story of the making of modern Karnataka. Because the foundations of today's Karnataka were laid especially during the reign of the later Wodeyars. Chamraj Wadeyar,
As in?
Nalvadi Krishnaraj Wadeyar, Jai Chamraj Wadeyar, and their divans, Sir M. Vishweshwaraya, Mirza Ismail,
Dams.
Albion Banerjee, so many others. So the Mysore state under the Wadeyars had so many firsts to its credit. It was the first principality in the whole of India to have a democratic form of government in the form of the Prajapratinidhi Sabhe, which was in 1881, long before, voting rights and all this was given.
Oh.
And a bicameral legislature, just as we have the Vidhan Sabha and Vidhan Parishad, that was formed in 1907 by Nalvadi Krishnaraj Wadeyar. You had 2 legislatures. The first to implement animal husbandry, family planning, women's education, reservation for weaker sections of society in government jobs, industrial, revolution in Mysore with all these industries that came up. Bangalore was the first city in India to be electrified. The first bulb in 1905 was lit here in our city. And this was because of the Shivanasamudra hydroelectric project, which was Asia's largest hydel power plant when it was built, and second largest in the world. So like this, there were so many first to its credit. This cosmopolitan culture which we in Bangalore, southern Karnataka, we revel in, that those things also, the cultural osmosis that the Mysore court facilitated through amalgamation of various styles of music and dance. And you had a Mysore Shaili of Bharatanatyam, which is very different from the Tanjavur Bani. Now it's almost dead. I don't think there are any main proponents of that art form, barring one or two people. But Padma Bhushan Venkat Lakshamma, she was the last Mysore Shaili Bharatanatyam. It was performed seated instead of the Bharatanatyam, which is
normal one, which is a standing one.
Standing one.
So
this is a seated Abhinaya. Too much of Abhinaya there. Everything very gentle. So you have the Mysore Bani of Veena, which all these Vainikas there, Sheshanna, Veene Sheshanna, Shamanna, Subbanna, you had so many of them in the Mysore court. And see the progressiveness of the Maharajas in 1920s. They also had a fusion between Veene Sheshanna on the Veena. You had someone on the violin, the Western violin, Schmidt on the violin, and you had Margaret Cousins on the piano. All of them actually looking at amalgamation. So today we just say, yeah. And very interestingly, Indian Institute of Science that we talk of, which probably laid the foundations for Bangalore becoming such a knowledge center. In 1902 or so, you had Sir William Ramsay, who came from the Royal Science Society in the UK, wanting to establish an institute of excellence in India. And they went all over the country to scout for a proper location. Those days, Bangalore had one of the best infrastructures in the country, which is not something we can say today. And good weather, nice people. So Bangalore was one of the options. And at that same time, you had the university in Roorkee, a college there. They also made a bid saying we also would like to apply for this. But at that time, seizing opportunity from this, that this would be very beneficial for the people here, the regent queen who was there, Krishnaraj Wodeyar, was a young little boy. His mother, Kempananjammanni, Vani Vilasa Sannidhana, who have the Vani Vilas hospital here, she immediately granted about 50 acres of land to this, and a very generous grant also to the Royal Society. And they didn't look any further, and that's how IISc was established here. Similarly, the KRS dam. I mean, today KRS, gives the water for the entire Mandya, Mysore, Bangalore belt. We drink water in Bangalore because of the Hesarghatta project that was initiated at that time. But this KRS also, when the budget of that was drawn, it far exceeded the state's budget. And so to bridge the deficit and provide the funding for that, the royal family actually collects all the jewels, the golden, plates and silver vessels. They pawn it in Bombay at competitive rates, and that is the seed money that goes into building that dam. Wow. Now, this is the beneficiaries of that are all of us till this date, and none of us give any credit or gratitude to the Wodeyar family for that. So I could go on about the many achievements of Mysore and literally the establishment of modern Karnataka. It didn't happen one fine night that someone established one company, and then it was a process for which the foundation was laid by the Wodeyars. And then, of course, later on many things happened, ISRO and HAL, and much later the IT revolution, which of course brought Bangalore to global limelight.
Glory.
But for that you needed someone to lay the foundation. Why was it only Bangalore? Why could it not have been any other city in the north, south, east, west, anywhere else? So that, those foundational years, that needed to be captured. And so coming back to the book, so that's how I thought there was so much to be told about this family, their political history, their social history, and the history of Karnataka in the making. And that's how this first book, Splendors of Royal Mysore, The Untold Story of the Wodeyars, it came out in 2008. about 17 years ago. And I thought it's a one book wonder. I'll finish that. And it was a childhood passion. I'll finish that and go back to I was in a regular day job then in companies, calculating profit and loss for some American company. And I thought one day I'm going to die like this, frustrated with nothing called a legacy left behind. But thankfully, again, I think, destiny had other plans. And that's why the sheer power of surrender to a higher plan, I think you should just be a very available instrument at all times to ensure that whatever is your task that you've been sent here for, you just are available to do that when opportunity is given to you.
It's a little pause here. So what happens is, Vikram, I mean, with this journey, what started as an accident, as a pure hobby thing you started, and you just dug so deep, wherein you gave a book.
Yeah.
And after which, again, you were working in a company. Then came a point wherein you thought, no, there has to be something more to be done here. And then you surrender to destiny, and then you let it take the flow. My question here is, there is a phase of everybody's life, wherein we call it young blood, wherein we feel that, we are in control, and we think that, okay, we are doing everything to the world. And there comes a point wherein accidentally there is a realization wherein you feel, oh no, it's not me. Probably there's something which is controlling us. So when did this happen to you, and how did you change after this happened?
Oh, I think it happened with the first book itself. Because while I was researching on that, in the Mysore Palace archives, quite accidentally I came across the name of this lady called Gauhar Jaan. So she was, and the Mysore Palace archives are very well, catalogued and maintained.
How did you access it? Firstly, were they very cordial in inviting you, a nobody, to access these things?
It was difficult. I mean, small little boy in half pants walking around and trying to, ask them details which they would not be willing to give. But I think, again, the Mysorean Kannada generosity and hospitality, slowly, I think that, it did happen. Thankfully, I was lucky. So in that there was a little box file of the visiting palace artists who all came to the palace at various time spans. Now the Mysore court, as I said, was a amazing blend of all styles of various art forms. So like I spoke about the Bharatnatyam and so on, which was influenced by Kathak. There were mudras and so on which were drawn extensively from Kathak. There was something called a salam, this thing which, I mean, you don't have this in Bharatnatyam. So we do a salam. So that is more from the Kathak style, which is done in the Mysore Shaili. So similarly, in the world of classical music, lot of Hindustani musicians used to come to the Mysore court. Abdul Karim Khan, Barkatullah Khan, all these people. And that's why on their way back to the north, many of them would stop by at Dharwad and Hubli and so on. That is how the Kirana Gharana came up there. You have all our Pandit Bhimsen Joshi, Gangubai Hangal, all of them who came up there. That's all on their return. So Kirana Gharana, which was literally started by Abdul Karim Khan Saab, he learned the Carnatic Shaili here with Mysore Vasudevacharya and others. The Kalpanaswaram technique that is done in Carnatic music, part of that was incorporated into Hindustani music, like sargams. Many Hindustani ragas were used in Carnatic songs, which people like Muttaya Bhagavatar and others, set those kritis to these tunes. So among that entire file, there were probably 4 or 5 pages about this lady called Gauhar Jaan. And so, the caption said she was the first gramophone celebrity, the first dancing girl of India and gramophone celebrity, and probably 3 lines of her biodata, that she was actually born of a Hindu grandmother, a British grandfather, an Armenian Christian father, and then how's this name Gauhar Jaan? So that also intrigued me. And then suddenly she was there in Mysore for all of 2 years, 1928 to 1930, and she died in 1930 in the KR hospital in Mysore. And after her death, there were so many letters of hers in that little file, which said, please don't reduce, don't cut income tax, increase my salary, this is too less, and all of these, and rejected written by the officers of the Maharaja's government, and hospital bills and so many things like this. And I again don't know, Rashmi, what happened then. That again on a whim, I said, this lady, her story needs to be told. And I really didn't know how, because she was a Tawayef. She was the courtesan community. So no legal heirs, aage na piche, nobody. So, but then how to go about this? But I was, I don't know, seized by something, maybe by her, that, this is the person through whom my story needs to be told. And the next 4 to 5 years of my life, I literally chased her through the length and breadth of India, from Azamgarh, where she was born, to Banaras, where the mother and daughter, the Armenian Christian parents, they have a divorce, and then the mother, she takes the daughter away and goes to Banaras, where they convert to Islam. And the mother becomes this very famous Tawayef of her times called Badi Malka Jaan, and the daughter becomes Gauhar Jaan. Then they go to Calcutta, which is where they live for most of their life. She's called also Gauhar Jaan of Calcutta. They become musicians in the court of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah. And the most epochal moment of her life was in 1902, when recording technology came to India from the West, from London. The gramophone company, she became the first commercially recorded artist, and thereby, literally opened the floodgates of music and music recording for several artists later. So I chased her all these places: Banaras, Azamgarh, Calcutta, Madras, Bombay, where she had a live-in partner for some years, then Mysore, where she died. I in fact went to the KR hospital masquerading as her grandson to to get a copy of her death certificate, which I managed to get, and that's there in the book's appendix. She died very young, at about 57 or 58 years of age. I also went to the Qabristan, the cemetery, Muslim cemetery in Mysore, to see if there was a resting place. All the pre-independence graves were in one particular part of the cemetery.
Yeah,
but
where in Mysore?
I can't remember which area. It's called the Qabristan Committee, this thing in Mysore, and that's where we went. This was, I'm talking of 2007 or 2008. So, but we couldn't find her grave. Such a illustrious, the first recorded artist, a diva of her times, a superstar, totally dying in anonymity. I even chased her all the way to Berlin and to London and other places. Berlin, because the recording expert who came on behalf of the gramophone company, he was a German called Frederick William Geisberg, and I went and managed to get hold of his diary, where he has copious, memories of how Gauhar Jaan, how she negotiated for for fees. She used to charge 3,000 rupees for one recording. No free recordings at all. So 3,000 rupees in 1902 we're talking of. And
that's a lot of money.
What all she would come dressed in, and so many such fantastic his memories of how she sang and so on, that was there. Then her mother was a great poetess in Urdu. She'd written an entire divan called Makzane Ulfate Mallika, or the treasure trove of Mallika's love. Very poignant shares on love, betrayal, and the usual motif of a Tawayef's life. And that I searched all over India, but nowhere got. Only one copy, that was in London, at the British Library in London. So that also I got from there. So it was literally like putting together pieces of a jigsaw puzzle to reconstruct this life of this superstar, who was, as I said, I mean, she was a diva of her times, because she used to charge so much. She led a very hedonistic and a very feisty kind of life. It's said that every evening she would go on these horse rides in those ghoda gadi with those white stallions, 6 of them. And Indians were not allowed to do that. So once when she's going like this, there is the cavalcade of the Viceroy which crosses hers. And he thinks, looking at her fair complexion, she's Anglo-Indian, and her jewelry and finery and goggles and all that, he thinks she's some Maharani or something, and then, doffs his hat. She also acknowledges him and goes away. And later he realizes that she's a common Tawayef, and then she's called to the palace, and she agrees to pay a fine of 1,000 rupees, but continues to go on her joyrides. So that kind of a feisty lady. Her pictures would appear on picture postcards made in Austria. power of technology, that it actually could traverse borders. A tawaif in Calcutta being known internationally, and but with all of that, the narrative of a tawaif's life, you fall in love with all the wrong men who cheat on you, and
We saw the Hira Mandi.
Hira Mandi, Gauhar Jaan, and all of that. And finally, she is reduced to a state of beggary. And that is when Nalvadi Krishnaraj Wodeyar hears about this, and he invites her as a court musician. And she comes here in 1928. By then, she's totally broken. So many court cases happening. Very, very dramatic kind of life, ups and downs. And that is where she dies so
For
early.
2 years.
2 years.
She's there in Mysore.
And one doesn't know. I wanted to know the reason of death, whether she had committed it herself or it was something else, but couldn't get those details. But I think through her life, it was so important to put many things in perspective. One was, in those times, it was a time of acoustic recording or mechanical recording, where there were no mics like this to amplify your voice. So there used to be a big horn that was fitted on the wall, and the singer had to put his or her head into that horn and scream as loudly as you could. And depending on how loudly you screamed, there would be a stylus on the other end which would oscillate and cut etches on a shellac disc, the 78 RPM. And the length of each disc was only 3 minutes. So in 3 minutes, you had to make like Presi writing in literature, something like Indian classical music, where one raga alapane you can go on for hours together. So this woman came up with a formula as to how you could condense it into 3 minutes and also scream into that horn. And usually, Indian classical musicians, while singing, they tend to move their head and hand and all these things. That would affect the audio quality going into the horn. So there would be two agents who would hold your hand, and one who would hold your head, push them into it and say, bellow hard. And so this is how these people, recorded. And great tribute to the women of this country, that when recording technology came to India, all over India, it was only women who recorded. Most of the men folk stayed away, saying, this is
because of all
this thing. And they said classical music, it's almost like a bastardization of classical music. It is such a important divine art form. We can't commercialize it. My music will not be heard on some chai ka adda. It has to be heard in a proper concert with this thing. Sacred. But these women, largely from the Tawaif and Devdasi community all over India, they said, no, we'll see. This is a new opportunity coming our way to make our voices heard, and for us to enter homes which we can't otherwise, of respectable people. So Gauhar Jaan was the leader of the pack, but there was numerous other women like that. There was Janki Bai of Allahabad, Zohra Bai Agriwali, Malka Jaan of Agra. In our own Bangalore, Nagaratnamma from our city of Bangalore, she was among the early recording artists of Carnatic music. Salem Godavari, Coimbatore Tai, Dhanakoti Ammal of Kanchipuram. All these people whose names don't even strike a bell today in the minds of historians or classical musicians. Because in 10-15 years, the early recording was completely dominated by women. And the male musicians then saw what this was doing to their lives. These people are earning so much. They're becoming so popular. Their records are selling like hotcakes. So then the men do what they do. They come and displace the women. And by then you also had this whole anti-notch campaign, where any woman who is in the performing arts is dubbed as a prostitute and literally cleaned out of it. And so their stories, their names also were literally thrown into the dustbins of history. Their records are now found in chor bazaars and raddi shops. People can hear the voice, but you don't know who the artist is. So Gauhar at least was a superstar and celebrity, but numerous other such anonymous, women whose tender voices, I think if they did not enter that makeshift studio and record as they did that day, Indian music industry would not have taken this giant leap thereafter. So that book was it was a journey into the past, which unraveled so many nuggets of our history, our social and cultural life, and also the lives of women of that era.
So, what personally touches you to pursue a story? And because you literally followed her, so much R&D goes, and there has to be some nerve that is being touched to you personally, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's they who choose me rather than me choosing them. Because here I was very sure that there's a higher power that is guiding me through this project of Gauhar Jaan. It was literally like searching for a needle in a haystack when it came to her. No connections anywhere. But somehow, as I went on that journey, one thing led to the other. Someone connected me to someone else. Otherwise, while sitting in Mysore Palace archive, I didn't think I'll find her mother's poetry collection in London. It just happened on the way, and that is why I think very early to the question that you asked, that when do you realize that you're just being an instrument, you're being played, is that these are instances like that which let you know that you just make yourself available, and some higher things happen through you. And I think as a reward, I think she changed my life completely. That book won several awards, the Sahitya Academy Award. It won an award internationally in New York, the ARSC International Award for his best excellence in historical research, and more importantly, did a couple of other things. One is, as a musician, as a student of music, I wanted to hear her voice. Like, how did she sound, and analyze her music also. But we couldn't get recordings of that era. A few of them helped me. There was Dr. Suresh Chandwankar of the Society of Indian Record Collectors and so on, Kushal Gopalka, several others who helped me source some recordings. I wanted to hear more, and that led me to another trail, which is to find where these early recordings of Indian music were. And that led me to the alleys and dark shanties of chor bazaars, raddi shops in various cities. And that is where valuable cultural inheritance of this country lies rotting.
Really?
And during that fellowship, which was there in Berlin, using Berlin as the base, I went to various national sound archives in different countries, in Vienna, in Paris, in Berlin, and London. And a couple of things that astonished me there was that there were valuable holdings of Indian recordings there. Not only of music, but also of people, leaders like Gandhi. There was a Lala Hardayal of the Gadar party. There were many people like this. Their voices were there. There was an archive in Berlin called the Laut Archive, where there were about 200 voices of prisoners of war of the First World War from India. And they were all asked to speak something in their native language. So from Tamil to Bengali to Pushto to Sindhi to Urdu and all other languages, they said something for 3 minutes.
Okay.
And Germans being Germans, for that 3-minute recording, there was a 45-page documentation. Who is this fellow? Which village he came from? What was his father's name? Which school he studied? That speech actually... if he could write, they would ask him to write it in his native script that would be transliterated and translated into German. And then the thing that they all asked, I had goosebumps when I heard a 1914, one of our ancestors of this country in a war camp speaking something in fright and fear, and that being documented and kept alive, frozen in history, so to say.
Crazy.
And they all used to ask me, doesn't India have a national sound archive? And I would hang my head in shame as an Indian, as a student of history and music, that we don't have one such. And so after coming back, that's how I tried a lot. This was 2010-11 when I tried to influence the government of the time, saying, why don't you establish something like this? I'd learned quite a bit of this whole digitization and all of this for records, and I said, we'll start a national sound archive in India. Governments don't move, so nothing happened there. And that's when Mr. T.V. Mohandas Pai, who was then with Infosys, I somehow serendipitously again came in touch with him, and then he said, I just discussed this casually, and he said, don't run behind governments. I'll give you the seed money. You establish it as a private, trust. And that's how this archive of Indian music came up in 2011. It's probably the first, online digital archive for vintage gramophone records.
So what all have you archived so
So
far?
there are about 15,000 gramophone records that we have saved, from Chor Bazaars in Avenue Road to Moor Market in Chennai to Dharamtala Mosque area in Calcutta to Chandni Chowk in Delhi, all kinds of places. 15,000 records across various genres. So it is Hindustani and Carnatic music, folk recordings, theatre recordings, early theatre recordings in Marathi Natya Sangeet and Bengali theatre, Parsi theatre, all of those. Karnatakas, all these Mysore Palace Band, the Natakas that used to happen with Bidaram Krishnappa and so many others in the Mysore Palace. Early cinema in various languages, going back to the Saigal and Devika Rani, that era. And some voices of leaders like Gandhi and Tagore and Subhash Chandra Bose and all of this. So these were all found in Chor Bazaars. And
so how do you intend to use them? Can anybody access the archive?
Yes, it is free of cost. So on soundcloud.com, if one goes and types archive of Indian music, your viewers, on soundcloud.com, archive of Indian music, I think 2,000 tracks are already up there for listening, and free of cost, sitting in the comfort of your home. You can listen to so many of them. It has the earliest recordings of India, Gauhar Jaan and all these other women I mentioned, Janki Bai, Zora Bai, Godavari. It has the first recording of MS Subbulakshmi as a 9-year-old child.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
What is the recording about? What
is
there in the recording?
I think it's some Tamil devotional song, Maragata Vadivu. She sings that to, I think, the Madurai Meenakshi's this thing, because she came from Madurai. And then there is, I think, the first ever recording of the Janaganamana by the Vishwa Bharati Chorus in 1911. So there are several such, treasures. There's Gandhi's only recording on the gramophone in 1931.
What is he saying?
It's on he calls it the spiritual message of Gandhi. And in fact, this was recorded when he goes to the Round Table Conference, to London. And then they put this bhopu in front of him and say something. He says, I don't want to say anything political. I will talk about God and what is the spiritual significance of God. And very interestingly, in that he brings a mention of Mysore, and he says, when I traveled through Mysore and I asked the common people, they said this place is ruled by a god, because we are in such contentment that it is almost seeming like a god rules us. And so does a principality like Mysore even need freedom when it is already in such an advanced state of prosperity? So many such interesting nuggets. Subhash Chandra Bose talking to Indians from Southeast Asia, that recording. And it is such a pity that we don't have a mechanism to protect and preserve and disseminate this. Today we are thinking of making an app or something, so that at the click of a button, your fingertip, where every information is available. Why is it that archival richness of our country cannot be made accessible to people? So one offshoot of Gauhar Jaan's pursuit was the establishment of this archive. The other thing that totally changed my life, thanks to her, was I was giving talks about her and this whole era in several places. So once I'd just gone to the University of Queensland in Australia. They'd invited me for a talk. And while I was talking, I was very fortunate that the heads of school of history and music, both of them were in the audience. And after the talk, they just came up to me and said, you've done so much work about this. You know so much about this era. Why don't you put this all together in the form of a PhD? And we'll be happy to house it here. I said, I don't want an honorary and all that. I want to work for it, 4 or 5 years. And again, I was so lucky that there was an Indian scholar there called Professor Singhal, who had passed away, and he had left behind a bequest saying any Indian young scholar who comes to this university to do a PhD, this money will go to finance that person's PhD study. And so that scholarship was already ready. So I didn't even have to pay a single pie to continue my PhD pursuit for 5 years in the University of Queensland. And that's how it happened. So the power of surrender. If I'd planned this and gone, I don't know if it could have happened. It just happened by the way. I was at the right place at the right time in front of the right people. But So most of these I wear it very lightly on my shoulder. These are not something I flaunt
Flaunt.
as my achievements or so. Yeah, as I said, I've just been very, very available instrument for a higher purpose.
That's a lovely way to look at your own achievement so far, so that it doesn't even take you to wrong places, because ego, power, getting into your head, these are all the poisons that a happy mind can be brought.
Yeah, and I think that's where the spiritual mooring helps, and my family background. I think my parents have ensured and helped me stay grounded, and yeah, they don't praise me too much, so that also doesn't get to your head.
So now, in your interesting journey, a big debatable topic has to be the two-volume biography of Savarkar, Veer Savarkar.
Yeah.
So while I was doing my research, let me just tell you what I stumbled upon. See, literally, when one has to host you for a podcast, I'm not sure if I carried so many sheets for my exam,
My God.
but for you. So Savarkar's life, interestingly, has been very controversial in its own way. One being he opposed the partition of India in 1947, they say.
Yeah.
Another one is he did criticized Gandhi's policies, especially the appeasement of Muslims.
Yeah.
Then faced social and political backlash after Gandhi's assassination.
Yeah. Yeah.
Opposed Nehru's policies, declined Padma Bhushan in 1965, and in February 26, 1966, he voluntarily, like Atmarpan, like they say, without food and water.
The
He
Jain tradition. Of,
Right. So with this being one of the pointers, personally, I mean, where do I start? Like, how did you pick Savarkar, a man whose certain points are these, but there is a lot more here. Firstly, what was this, starting point? What drew you to the biography of Savarkar?
Again, Savarkar drew me to him.
That's
So
an interesting way of how you've looked at things
all
and
of them.
accepting it.
Yeah, because very coming together of improbable, entities these are. I mean, whether it was Gauhar Jaan earlier or Savarkar, very different from my way of life or the kind of personality that I am. But as I said, I'm half a Maharashtrian. In my maternal home, there used to be in hushed tones a lot of discussion about Savarkar. But in my growing up years, I don't think I'm sure you also didn't. I certainly didn't read about him in our textbooks in school. Not only about him, but also several other political prisoners who were put with him in the Kala Pani jail in Andamans in Port Blair. So I think the first time, and we knew that, my maternal side, there used to be this talk that when Gandhi was assassinated in 1948, just like you had the 1984 Sikh riots, anti-Sikh riots in Delhi, because Gandhi was murdered by among others, two Maharashtrian Brahmins, Nathuram Godse and Narayan Apte. There was a large-scale riots that you can call it a genocide or a carnage of Maharashtrian Brahmins all over Maharashtra, which people don't even know much about. It was initially with the Chitpavan Brahmins, the same community that Godse and Apte came from, but later it spread even to the Deshasthas in Maharashtra. And villages were ethnically cleansed of Maharashtrian Brahmins, their properties looted, several people killed, huge riots that ensued. And see, I mean, history repeats itself, they say. So 1948, very perversely you change the digits, 1984 happened. So if at all we had listened and taken good measures, just because someone is assassinated, a great leader, the assassin's community pays a price for that. These people had nothing to do with it. Godse and Apte and others were rightfully executed for killing somebody. But what did all these people who belong to the same community do? That perverse thing right at the establishment of a new nation. These things were being spoken about in my mother's house, because I think there were some people of the extended family who were victims, who had nothing to do with politics. They also, losing their lives and properties and all that. So I knew that there's some murky detail about this man and his past, of which none of us knew. I think the first time I really, read something about him was in the first NDA government when Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. You had his Savarkar's portrait being unveiled in the Central Hall of Parliament, and that had caused a lot of uproar, at that time. And then there was also a plaque that the government of India had put at the Port Blair Kalapani prison in memory of Savarkar. And 1 year later, when the NDA collapsed and you had the UPA government come into power, they got that plaque removed and thrown away. And you had Ms. Mani Shankar Iyer, who was a minister then, actually making a lot of derogatory remarks about Savarkar, of him being a traitor and all that. And that really, piqued my curiosity. I really wanted to know what is it about this man that,
So polarized.
so polarized view. Someone loves him, someone hates him with equal vengeance. And what is it that makes people do this? And so that's how I started reading slowly about him. But slowly I saw that he was intruding contemporary political discourse like very few leaders of the past. Especially in the run up to the 2014 elections, you had, Rahul Gandhi invoking his name in rallies, in election speeches. Then when Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister, he also went to Kalapani and paid his obeisance at the cell. And you had state governments, including Karnataka, in Rajasthan, in Chhattisgarh, wherever the Congress was, spending valuable time saying, should we include him in the textbook? Is he a Veer or is he a Mafi Veer? Was he a stooge of the British? And all these kind of polarizing political football that his legacy had become. And I wondered, if there is a young man or woman in India today who wants to know what is all this fuss about and who the hell is this man and why is he so relevant after 60 years after he is dead and gone, there's no book to turn to. The last biography of his, a comprehensive biography, was written in the 1960s by this man called Dhananjay Keer. And after that till now, so many books have been written on Gandhi, on Nehru, on Bose and Bhagat Singh. But this person who incites so much of passion today for and against, and the ideology that he propagated, Hindutva, which is in the ascendant in India today, nobody wants to read about him or understand the rubric of his life. And that is how, just like what happened with the Mysore book, that there's no book to read, so you be the first one to write it. So that's how the Savarkar volumes happened. And that also over 5 years of intense hard work. But luckily here, there was a problem of plenty. There was just so much of material which was screeching to be heard and unattended by people.
Where did you find the material and how did you find the trail?
So here, he's a public figure. He wrote himself copiously. He was a very talented Marathi poet. He was also a playwright, a theatre playwright. He was a journalist who had his own, magazine and newspaper which he started called Shraddhanand. There were columns. So the amount of material that he wrote in his life ran into almost 10 volumes in Marathi called Savarkar Samagra Vangmay. And just to digest that, and his views on anything and everything under the sun was there. So that was straight from the horse's mouth what he's talking. And
where were these archives? These are all physical copies.
Yeah, physical copies. There's a trust that his family had established, which has the originals, and now they're being published and translated and all that.
Nice.
So considering I can understand Marathi, it was easier to go to those. But then along with this, the National Archives of India, the Maharashtra State Archives, and archives outside India, the same British Library which gave me Malka Jaan's book of poems, has reams and reams of pages, almost 40,000 pages that I collected from just that one archive. He stayed in London for 5 years during his student days, and he starts this revolutionary movement in India sitting in London. So his trial there, what all happened, all of that, there are thousands of pages that are there.
Wow.
So those, then the Gandhi assassination trial itself, there are about 11,000 pages in the National Archives of India, which I accessed. So it was putting together all of this in the form of those two books to make a sense of this man, what drove his life. So here was a young boy who started India's first ever secret society, to of revolutionaries to get India complete independence. And I'm talking about the 1890s, 1900s, when the Congress was not even on the picture and didn't ask for complete freedom. So you have a two parallel narratives of our freedom movement which comes out through these two volumes. One is the one which we are all aware of, the non-violent, ahimsa, satyagraha, which Gandhi is the protagonist of.
He opposed it, right?
Yes. So there was another movement which ran parallel, which we don't talk about, which is the violent uprising of the revolutionaries. And as much as they are relegated to footnotes in our history books, it was a continuous and unending chain of events, right from the 1857 rebellion, uprising, which the British called Sepoy Mutiny, which actually Savarkar wrote an entire book on it and called it the first war of Indian independence. He wrote it as a student of law in London, where he was studying in those 5 years, going to the same archive where I went, the British Library archives, and accessing those papers and writing this and giving it a sense of prestige and respect, that it is not a Sepoy Mutiny where a few sepoys were, sad that beef and pork cartridges were used and that's why they came up in a rebellion. He said there was two driving motives for that. One was Swarajya and Swadharma, for your own freedom and also for your own faith. Both Hindus and Muslims came together in this 1857 uprising. So from there onwards, you had several others. In Maharashtra, especially, Maharashtra became the hotbed of revolutionary movement. You had people like Vasudev Balwant Phadke, you had the Chafekar brothers, and then Savarkar, who starts the first secret society, as I said, which was called Abhinav Bharat, inspired by the young Italy movements of Mazzini and Garibaldi and all these Italian revolutionaries. So Abhinav Bharat, Young India. So young people getting into this movement. And then as a student in the Ferguson College in Pune, he organizes the first ever student bonfire of Videshi goods, clothes, to protest against the partition of Bengal in 1905, and for that he's actually rusticated from college. He's also fined and so on. So there is an unending chain of this revolutionary armed struggle. Savarkar, several of his contemporaries, Shamji Krishnavarma, Madam Bhikaji Kama, Madan Lal Dhingra, VVS Iyer, MPT Acharya from our state of Karnataka, all these people whose name I think nobody would even know. There's a Bhikaji Kama place in Delhi. If you ask who is this, they don't know. It's a man, woman, what it is and why it is called Bhikaji Kama place. But she was a Parsi woman who leaves her married life, a very wealthy Parsi family in Bombay, plunges into revolutionary movement, shifts to Europe. She's first in London and then in Paris, and she becomes this mothership of all these fiery revolutionary young hot-blooded men who wanted to uproot the British Empire through a violent uprising. So characters like this, very fascinating characters. Then you had the Gadar movement in the second decade, 1910 to 20, during the First World War, where transcontinental, so India, Germany, Singapore, San Francisco, Canada, across the place, Indians were uniting, revolutionaries uniting in an overthrow of the British, imperialism. So you had that. Then you had, of course, the HRA of Sachindranath Sanyal, Ram Prasad Bismil, Ashfaqullah Khan, then Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, Rajguru.
Some have seen in Rangde Basant.
Yeah, that we know at least. And ultimately culminating in the Indian National Army, which was formed by Rash Bihari Bose, but later on taken on by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. And that is what got India her freedom, a violent uprising which happened. In fact, we still call that 1946 what happened as a naval mutiny. It should have been called the last war of Indian independence, just as that was the first war. So in 1946, all the army units in Navy and Army, they start coming up in rebellion. And that is when, within 3 weeks of that happening, the British sent the cabinet mission plan to India negotiating freedom. So they did not want a repeat of 1857. They did not want the army to go against them, because if they did, that was the end of the British Empire. And that was the entire philosophy of the revolutionary movement that lasted for 90 years. So through Savarkar's life, it also becomes a window to the very important political and social movement that happened in these 90 years, which sadly has been snuffed under and not talked about. So just as there through Gauhar Jaan's life, it was a portrait of the social, cultural, the role of women and what they did in the background. Similarly, here, though the book is on Savarkar, it is not only his biography but a story, a parallel story of India's freedom struggle.
What are the challenges you did face in accessing the British and the Indian archives relating Savarkar?
Access here was a problem of plenty. Like there was so much. There was just so much to access. And I was very diffident whether I could even do justice to a colossal figure like this man, who was an intellectual, who wrote so much, who theorized so much. I thought I was very, very, incapable of being able to do something like this. And controversial too, because nobody is controversial by themselves. People make them controversial, and today's politics does do that to him. So with all these diffidence in mind, I remember sharing it with my mother, that is this something that I should even take up, and how do I do this? I'm seeing so much, it's like a jungle. How do I make my way through it? And I don't know, she was not a mountain climber ever, but she gave me a very interesting piece of advice. She told me that when you're climbing Mount Everest, they say you should never look back or look up, to see so much more is left. Oh my God, if you have vertigo, you may fall down. So one step at a time. You keep concentrating on one step at a time, 1 year of his life, next year. Before you realize, you would have climbed the summit. And I thought that was a very good way to handle this. So part by part, the various aspects of his life, and he lived for so long. He was almost 85 years of his life, and with so many stormy details, which traverses countries and jail and revolution, and then this Hindutva and political life, and then again in jail for Gandhi's murder, and all these things.
And later he asked for mercy.
Yeah, all of those things.
Is this true that it was his ideology which is now linked to RSS, like Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, and apparently he was never a formal member, and at times he also opposed RSS. I mean, what are these? Are these hearsay or
no? The RSS, and we think when we talk of Hindutva, that RSS has some proprietary right over Hindutva. It's not their property. Hindutva, there are numerous organizations that espoused Hindutva in their own way. The RSS brand of Hindutva was different. Savarkar's brand of Hindutva was different.
Can you help us explain this? Because some say he was a cultural nationalist.
Yeah.
Keeping Hindutva, but today Hindutva is very religious, and it's a different, the shade is very different, though the name is the same. So can you help us here?
Yeah, so there's a context also in which he coined, the word was already there, but he popularized it sitting in jail in 1923 in Ratnagiri. That's when he writes this very slim book called Essentials of Hindutva and Who is a Hindu. Now, in the backdrop of what was happening in the country, the Khilafat movement, which Gandhi had launched. Now, the Khilafat movement, the wordplay makes us feel ki Angrezon ke khilaf this movement, but that was actually a pan-Islamic movement to re-establish the caliphate in Turkey. Now, the British had won Turkey in the First World War, and Turkey was ruled by the caliph, whom a section of Muslims consider as the inheritor of the Prophet Muhammad's legacy. Caliph came directly from the Prophet, so he's a holy person. So, but the people of Turkey itself did not want the caliph to rule. They had Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, who came as the ruler, but the democratic head of Turkey. But Gandhi promised the Muslims of India, saying that we will jointly agitate both for freedom as well as to re-establish a caliphate in Turkey. Now, that it is very illogical that why we were a slave nation then, India. So if 10 people sit here with black flags saying we want the caliph to sit in Turkey, the British had won that country in war. They are not obliged to listen to us. So Gandhi bartered the participation of Indian Muslims in the freedom movement on this premise, because it was probably paved with good intentions, just as the road to hell also is. So, but he kept saying that there were not many Indian Muslims who were participating in the freedom movement. So he said, if you join us and participate in the non-cooperation movement, in return we will help you re-establish the caliphate. So it's like a barter system. And Savarkar and several others in the Congress too, including Motilal Nehru, Annie Besant, they were aghast at this. That, why should you give this lollipop to somebody? I mean, the Indian Muslims are as much a part of this country, and whether this country gains freedom or not matters to them as much as it should to any other community. For that, you don't have to, cajole them with something else. Why this extraterritorial allegiance or devotion to some other country? So in that context, he writes this treatise saying who is a Hindu, and right at the beginning he says that this Hindutva, it has nothing to do with the theological aspects of Hinduism, the religion, soul, super soul, afterlife, all that I'm not getting into, but it is an answer to political Islam, which was across countries the way it goes. And he says a Hindu is someone, as you rightly said, cultural nationalism, where he has a phrase also, A Sindhu, Sindhu Paryanta. So from Sindhu to the seas, the Indus to the seas, anybody who considers this land as their Punya Bhumi and Pitru Bhumi, that also people distort, saying Pitru Bhumi, so fatherland, so very Nazi. Pitrus are not your father, Pitrus are your ancestors. You have Pitru Paksha and all that.
Right.
So the Pitru Bhumi, anyone who considers this as the land of their ancestors, and Punya Bhumi, again, not by terms of religion, but you have your allegiance to this place. So its freedom matters to you as much as, Turkey's Sultan who's ruling there. So anybody who abides by these two principles is a Hindu culturally and nationally. In their home they can be a Muslim, a Parsi, Jain, Buddhist, whatever else, but culturally and nationally they would be called a Hindu, and Hindutva is the essence of that. So that is how he defined the entire Hindutva at that time, which has evolved over several decades after he coined it in 1923, about 112 years back. But one of the offshoots of that was the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which again I think this is the year of their 100th year of their establishment, where Dr. Hedgewar, who was one of the people who founded the movement, Savarkar was never associated with the RSS in his life, but his elder brother was very much a part of the RSS, Ganesh Damodar Savarkar. And so there was a very nebulous kind of coming together of various organizations who all espoused the larger cause of, Hindutva, but they had their own way of doing this, where you needed. So Hindutva, I think, according to what he saw, had a dual objective. One was Hinduism that resists, and also Hinduism that reforms. The resistance part is, we must face it, Rashmi, that we may believe in Ekam Sat, Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti, there is one truth, there are many paths to this truth and all this.
Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
All of those lovely adages. But civilizationally, historically, you've been in contact with ideologies which don't think all paths are the same. They do feel that there is one and only one path, my way or the highway, and those who don't subscribe to this are to be treated as lesser beings. Bringing them to our fold either by force or allurement through conversions is a duty, ordained duty by God. And to do that, that's how you've had thousands of years of strife, the crusades abroad, or the 800, 900 years of invasions in India, which was all on this, that, you don't subscribe to this one, you are a lesser being. We will destroy your places of worship, we will ruin your family, your women, and everything, children and properties and lives also, unless you change. So when you are in contact with something like this, will all these virtuous sayings, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, where does that stand? You will not be the first aggressor. You are not the one to take an arm or convert someone, but if someone is doing this to you, do you not put a ring fence around your farmland if there are stray cattle coming and eating your crops? So that was the ideology itself of resistance. And I think Savarkar and Gandhi constantly differed in this front right when they were young people. So in 1908 or so, they both meet in London when Gandhi was in South Africa. He comes to London, and Savarkar and all these other boys who were of the revolutionary movement, they lived in this place called India House. So in that, Gandhi is giving a talk, and that is during the Dashera festival. And Gandhi once again says, I'm not going to talk anything about politics. I will talk about Ram Rajya and what is an ideal kingdom and all that. And after he steps aside, Savarkar comes to the podium and he says, see, we are talking about Ram Rajya. Rama also had to go to Lanka and wage a war to kill Ravana and then take Sita. He didn't sit in Satyagraha in front of him, and Ravana took mercy and then said, okay, chalo, take your wife and go. So there is a part which is, and we're doing this talk in Dashera, and in those 9 days in the Durga Saptashati, the Devi is seen annihilating every, evil being. In the Bhagavad Gita, you have Krishna himself saying to Arjuna that even if your opponent is your father, your uncle, your guru, your cousin or whoever, if that person is on the path of adharma, the Hindu philosophy is to get rid of him. So absolute non-violence is not a part of Hindu philosophy. All our gods and goddesses are shown with astra shastras, not as ornaments. It is to strike when there is evil.
Right.
So his challenge to Gandhi also is that, do you consider the British Raj as adharmic? If it is an adharmic entity, annihilating it is the end. The means doesn't matter. Violent means are as much important to get rid of, and most often violence is needed to uproot a very oppressive opponent, just as all our history has shown, right, from Ramayana and Mahabharata times downwards. So I think they differed there intensely on what approach to take to get the ends, the freedom at the end of it.
One was philosophy oriented, other one is very action oriented, reality.
Yes, and that is how.
If you can't take action, and then how will you get the fruit of it?
Exactly. And in fact, even after freedom, that's what he was advocating. Gandhi wanted a disbanding of the Indian army itself after freedom, saying, no, we are a peace-loving nation. But Savarkar opposed him at even that stage, saying, peace comes at a cost. A weak person cannot talk about peace. Peace comes, with strength. Only if you are, armed, then someone will take you seriously, and actually peace will follow. So all these ideological differences, I'm not saying this is right or that is wrong. These are two different worldviews which existed. And I think the beauty of India should be that we understand that there are multiple paths. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. So even in the political sphere, there are multiple ways of looking at it, and Savarkar had a different way, and that doesn't make him a traitor or just because he opposed Gandhi. Gandhi's is a very important worldview. So was an opposing worldview that existed. So Hindutva was, as I said, first one was Hinduism that resists. The other part which was equally important was Hinduism that reforms. So Hindu society, the way it is splintered into castes and subcastes and all of that. The Hindutva movement always said that unless you come together en bloc, like one entity, you cannot face the opposition. And so Hindu Sangathan, or coming together, that was a very important part of their ideology. So in 13 years, he was in house arrest in Ratnagiri, Savarkar, after coming out of Kalapani. And in those 13 years, he initiates so many social reforms in Ratnagiri. So intercaste dining, intercaste marriage.
Widow remarriage.
Yeah, widow remarriage. Even from his childhood, he had written poems about how widows should be treated, and not in the way that they are, shaven heads and not allowed to participate in the joys of life and all that. So, but in Ratnagiri, where even among the Maharashtrian Brahmins, the Chitpavans and the Deshasthas would not sit together and eat. He started a inter-dining cafe where members of all castes, including the lowest, could sit together and eat there as Hindus. He said, your identity is not as a Chitpavan Brahmin, a Mahar, and all those different castes, but you are a Hindu. And so two Hindus are brothers, and so they can sit together and eat here. There was also an Asprishya Ganapati that he started, the Ganpati Utsav, which Tilak had started in Maharashtra. He took it one level ahead, where this was an untouchable Ganapati, where the pujari was someone from the lowest caste in the hierarchy. And even the Brahmin had to go and touch his feet and worship that Ganpati. And in India, the first ever temple which allowed members of all castes to worship together, the Patit Pavan temple. Someone Patita, someone who's fallen, you're uplifting that fallen person. A temple like that was formed in Ratnagiri in 1931. This was done in the schools. Children of untouchable, so-called untouchables, could not sit with the other communities. They would sit outside. So he steered so much and efforts to make all of them sit in the same class and study. So a lot of these things saying, remove these distinctions of caste, and that is when you can come together as a society. And a lot of these thoughts were far ahead of his time. So he never became popular. He was always, especially the Orthodox community, even among the Hindus, hated him for his vision and his thoughts and so on. And so that's the sad part.
He was the not so popular guy, also clashing with the ideologies of Gandhi, because of which it was like a house on fire combination. And is that how, I mean, we understand any surprising and emotional moments that you encountered while you were writing the book?
Oh my God, so many. I mean, each of these, right? I mean, the kind of things they did in London as young boys in their 20s, would all come from, middle class, lower middle class families with aspirations to go to Europe and study. And they get drawn into this movement to liberate the country, for which they are willing to even sacrifice their lives. And then the tortures that these people, so Savarkar and several others, they were apprehended for sedition against the British Crown. And that is how he's sent away to Kalapani in the Port Blair. And along with him, there are about 100 other political prisoners who are all young people, late teens, early 20s, and the kind of life they led. And through the diaries of some of these people, including of Savarkar, we get a glimpse into that. Even the basic human facilities of good food is not given to them. It's all, food that is decayed or so on. And in that there are pieces of reptiles and lizards and all that. And eating which most of them would end up with diarrhea. But there were strict timings when you could go to the washroom. So with diarrhea, if you had to repeatedly visit the washroom, they ended up defecating in their own rooms, in their cells, which were so narrow. Even, you stood up, you'll hit the roof. Narrow cells. So urinating and defecating in your own cell, and sitting, sleeping, eating amidst your own squalor. Standing handcuffs for 6 months. And he was put in solitary confinement for some 6 months and so on, where the only contact to human society, his cell, if you go to Port Blair even now, it directly opens to the gallows. So every day you are seeing people being, brought there to be hung. So how much of
how depressing is that?
Yeah. And in the blazing heat of Port Blair, they would have this Koluka bell. A bullock is tied to a oil grinding machine, and the bullock goes round and round and round, and that's how it extracts oil from the thing. So
today we do this cold pressed oil in the machine.
Yes.
This is where the
freedom fighters would be yoked, these revolutionary freedom fighters. Not a single congressman was ever in Port Blair. It was all people of this revolutionary movement who were sent to Port Blair, because they were considered as the ones who were so dangerous. And so these people, in the whole day, in the blazing heat of Port Blair, you had to go round and round, not a drop of water given to you. You had to extract 30 pounds of oil. And at the end of the day, that would be measured. And even if 1 ounce of oil is not there, you would be whiplashed, you would not get food. no medical facilities if you fell sick, skin rashes, leeches, biting on them, nothing. And so the tortures were so immense at Port Blair. But sadly, I mean, today through your podcast, if we ask the viewers, can they name 5 people who, forget Savarkar, someone else who are housed there? I don't think our people will even remember those names. And if one goes to Port Blair, there is a big plaque which talks about all the revolutionaries who are housed there over several years. But these names don't strike a bell. Whereas I feel, it should become a pilgrimage center where every, young Indian should go there and at least show our gratitude and respect. Today we are sitting happily in this air-conditioned room and breathing fresh air thanks to what these people suffered then. And the least we can do is at least know who they were, their names, and spend a little...
respectful.
Yeah. And despite that, for dirty politics of today, we sit and give certificate. Oh, this fellow was a traitor. That fellow was this. Anti-national. These people have sacrificed so much sitting there. Savarkar, he was a meritorious student. All his degrees were snatched away from him. So his law degree from London, his master's degree and bachelor's degree from Fergusson College. On the paper, he was only a metric pass. His entire property was confiscated. He and his brother both were at Kalapani, the elder brother whom I said, Ganesh Damodar. And at that time, the women of the family, the kind of sufferings that they endured, because the society had ostracized them, saying they are criminals' wives, both the wives of the 2 men. They literally, even their utensils to cook taken away. They had to literally beg to eke a living. And that time, Madam Bhikaji Kama, whom I mentioned, she used to send money orders to the Savarkar women so that their livelihood could go on. So these kind of tortures that not only them, their families, particularly the women in the household, I think we should be very, very careful when we put tags and certificates of loyalty and patriotism on other people, by first understanding what all they endured to get us where we are today. So I think they deserve so much of our respect and tribute. And so that was something that came. I went to Kalapani to during my research. And I think if you are sensitive, emotionally sensitive, spiritually sensitive, you can't miss the fact that there are so many, Atrupt Atmas there. It is very, very poignant to go there because many people committed suicide, most of these youngsters, because they couldn't take this torture day in and day out. What sort of life is that where you don't even get to eat good food or use a washroom properly? So many people either committed suicide or many young men actually went mad. So the British actually started an entire, asylum at a place called Haddo Island, because every day, so many people were losing their mental balance. So that is the kind of, electric shocks being given to them. So these type of tortures, when you go there, you can't but be not affected by those unseen cries of so many people. And I came back to the room very, very disturbed, and I'd actually broken down, saying, what all have our ancestors gone through? And the smallest of thing for us to do is to at least know about them, know their names, pay our gratitude and tribute to them as a nation. Otherwise, what an ungrateful country would we be, or we are, where we don't, recognize and put these on record.
When you were sharing these stories, what came to my mind was recently I'd gone to Cambodia, where Phnom Penh is the place where the killing field.
Yeah.
And your S21 is a place where, Port Paul is the Hitler of their, history. So I could literally feel every word you said. I couldn't take a tour into the killing field.
Yeah.
Because that's a big tourist attraction. I just don't know what to say, because history is always, they say it's not very pleasant, So much of atrocities have been thrown. So with this background, somewhere I always feel today's generation, the memory or whatever, be it social media distractions, how can one be more faithful, more conscious about running the country further as a general public? Any thoughts on how can we now take this, especially to Gen Zs today?
Yeah,
Or
no, so I mean, this is a journey I've also had from that boy who hated history and who got maximum punishment in history class, kneeling down outside class all the time, to now I've realized that history is such an indispensable and important part of our lives. If we need to identify, it helps. It's like a mirror in which we can identify ourselves as a nation, as a civilization, our identity, where we come from. And unless you know that, you will not know where to go. The
no
country
wonder they
which
say, no, history is who we are and why we are the way we are.
exactly,
Like
exactly.
David McCullough
Yeah,
has
yeah.
quoted somewhere.
Yes. So yeah, I think that understanding is so important. It's a travesty that it is taught in such a insipid and boring manner to us. But unless you get these, that sense of ownership, that sense of responsibility, if you know what all has gone through to get what we have got today, I think we would value that freedom a lot more. We would value what we have inherited a lot more.
And
And
use it carefully.
use it carefully. So similar, I mean, I'm not talking only of the political part, the cultural part too. If you don't know the backstory of how those women faced the challenges and went into that gramophone recording studio and recorded, you won't value your iTunes today. It's come in 150 years. It's a huge journey. But where did they start? What were the challenges of those people and how did they circumvent it? So today's challenges, maybe they'll give you some kind of inspiration or some kind of reference point as to how to overcome obstacles and move forward in life.
So, lastly, I mean, Savarkar is a huge topic. I mean, you've written 2 books on it. And if he were to be alive today, any thoughts on how he would have viewed our modern India?
I guess he would have been very disappointed with the way we've turned out. Because even in his last years, I think he kept warning Nehru's government about several things, including not taking the Chinese at face value. When the Chinese aggression of Tibet, when that happened, he said, these is alarm bells for us. So don't go overboard with this Hindi, Chini, Bhai Bhai and all that was going on. Chou Enlai and Nehru. And as predicted in 1962, you had the war and the China showed us our place. And so similarly, even in the Northeast, he constantly used to keep saying that, the rapid conversions that are happening, the demographic changes that are happening in the Northeast will lead to national security problems. And lo and presto, most of the insurgency things in that area happened thereafter. So similarly, so many of these talking about industrialization, talking about urbanization of India and not just of the villages and rural economy. So in everything, if you see from with comparison to Gandhi's Gram Swaraj and India being only in villages, this man was talking about, no, don't romanticize poverty, don't romanticize. Today there is a rapid urbanization. There are tier 2, tier 3 cities, and that is the way villages can become self-sufficient, and you don't have to have exodus to cities to earn a living. So yeah, and particularly on issues of national security, on military strength, economy and all of that, and a scientific and rational outlook to everything. So I think many of these things that he's always espoused, I think in the 75 years after independence, he would have been quite disappointed that a lot of it was not the way probably he would have dreamt of it as.
Why is that there was always friction between Gandhi, Nehru, and Savarkar?
I think it was more ideological. It was, the fact that they were opposite poles of the political and ideological spectrum, and the two could never meet. So that's, and it's true. In fact, quite serendipitously, I must say that Gandhi's portrait in the Central Hall of Parliament is diagonally opposite to that of Savarkar in the Parliament. And I don't merit our politicians with so much of intelligence that they thought through all this and that's how they placed it. But quite accidentally, it's come in such a way that they are the two poles of Indian history which will never converge, and which is fine. I mean, you need a counter view to everything. There is no the idea of India. I think there should be multiple ideas of India in a country like ours, where Nothing is unitary. There is no one book, one idea, one person. Diversity is our strength. So
Absolutely.
why not, when it comes to, why do people say the idea of India? And that is one person's idea of India, whether it is Gandhi or Nehru. There could be other ideas which need to be nurtured. So modern Republican India need not become a monolith where everyone, there is one, the father of the nation, there is one thing. So that monochromatization of Indian thought and philosophy is completely an antithesis to what India
Stood for.
and has always stood for.
But somehow, whoever comes to power eventually does that
Yes,
in their own way. Just that there's a change in the timeline.
correct. And now there is that friction. There are those countercurrents which are coming out in all fields. Not, and we saw it in the political spectrum for the first time. I think to have a non-Congress, the dominant, political party of India after freedom, from panchayat to parliament, one party rule, one family, that got shook after 2014. You've had that in other, and the spiraling effect of that has been in various other fields, whether it is media, whether it is academics, whether it is culture. So there are other views which are now dying to say we also have a voice, we also need to be heard. There is an alternative opinion. Don't demonize that alternative opinion as being reactionary and revisionist and all that. It is just another point of view. So different POVs can exist, which you should let thrive.
To reality, I don't know. I mean, very situational to this. We know a comedian whose video again went viral recently, and to pass on a message, even the place where the stand up was recorded, that place was vandalized and all of that. Wherein, like how we are discussing the history of the past 100 years, like how there was always an opposition trying to
Yeah.
question the ideologies. Today, we parallelly see comedians do that. There are people, journalists, whose voices have been silenced, and there is a fear. With all of this, I mean,
Yeah.
should we just say history is always repeating itself?
Yeah, because no one heard it the first time.
Lastly, any few closing thoughts on how to celebrate Veer Savarkar and keep his ideologies alive today? Because you've done 5+ years research about the man who's given his blood,
Yeah.
everything to India.
No, I don't know if he would also approve of a celebration. He wouldn't want commemoration or deification. And I would actually, in his writing, several places he says, you are free to oppose me, have a counter view, let's have an intellectual debate and a counter. So the answer to a book is another book. The answer to an offensive comment is another counter, not counter offensive, but a proper legal way, not vandalism, not gundagiri that happens. If some film offends you, you make another counter view to that, or you write a book. In, like, when I was offended by the way the royal family of Mysore was portrayed in the serial, if I were much older, I could have also gone and just broken down that set. But I decided to write a book as a counter. So which led me on a totally different, journey of life.
Choose your retorts carefully.
Yeah,
Choose your weapon.
weapon carefully, because as we started right at the beginning, just that the mind is a double-edged sword. You can either use it for self-destruction or you can construct something beautiful. So the choice also is in your hands. You could do either of it. So I think Savarkar, that way, I think the person is not important. It is the thoughts, the ideas. And I think in India, this hero worship is so much, that we make a bust out of that person and make an idol of that. And then what that person stood for, or what, that is totally vanished. And so it happens with Gandhi only, right? I mean, Gandhi as a apostle of non-violence, after his very assassination, if his followers go on a rampage and kill all the Brahmins of Maharashtra for a crime they did not commit, did they really understand Gandhi's message of non-violence? Was it so weak that within 12 hours of a murder, they actually did this? Then what? And these were largely inspired by Congress, goons of the time, as had been documented by people there. So what did it do? What did that teaching do? You made a bust of his, you made him the father of the nation, but did you actually imbibe anything that he said or stood for? So that is, I think, more important, and we shouldn't remove that bust and put another bust without reading or understanding what that person stood for.
Vikram, I think I should do some 20-30 sessions with you. I mean, that's how much you know, and that's how deep you've dug through your journey of life, and through which you've found your purpose, and you've been nurturing it through your writing. Now comes a controversial figure for Karnataka and, of course, to the south of the world, that is south of India, Tipu.
Yeah.
Firstly, the most debated personality today, from the political angle and also from an angle which is very close to our history. Is he a freedom fighter, or was he an oppressive ruler?
This is a very difficult task to, I think, put people in brackets, in labels and binaries. I would certainly not call him a freedom fighter. He was a very, very brave warrior, very had a kind of visceral hatred for the British until the very end, till the last day of his life, which was 4th of May 1799. He kept fighting and he died fighting the British. All that given. But does that make him a freedom fighter? Does anyone opposing the British become a freedom fighter? At a time, now the same, Marxist historians and others say that till the British Raj was established, there was no country called India. When they gave us, like, politically, they unified us as India. Till then, there was all warring principalities, fighting with each other and all that. So if there was no India, then what India was he fighting for? As a freedom fighter, he was fighting for his kingdom, his honor, his family, his needs. Just as he was fighting the Nizam, the Marathas, he fought the British also. But that doesn't take away his bravery, because if he had an understanding that the British were colonial and they are going to, like, make the country a slave nation and all that, he, in his fight against the British, he was taking the help of the French. And if perchance, the French, the Tipu had won, today in this conversation we would be having in French and not in English, because India would have become a French colony, or at least Karnataka or Mysore would have become a French colony. Just as you had Pondicherry, people talk in French. So what sort of a freedom fighter is somebody who actually takes the help of a foreign power to fight another foreign power? That doesn't take, as I said, take away his bravery. But and all through, on the one hand, he was soliciting French because of the French-British rivalry. The other thing and more dangerous thing that he was doing is to appeal to the larger Ummah or the Muslim Brotherhood on matters of faith. Actually writing to them saying, I am the true Muslim ruler of India, and wearing medals of honor, saying, I have killed so many kafirs or infidels, I have broken so many temples, so many churches, Hindus and Christians being massacred. So I am the true Badshah, who needs to be celebrated. And even 2 years before his death, he writes a letter to Zaman Shah, the Durrani ruler of Afghanistan, with a letter which says very clearly, he says, you invade Hindustan and in a 2-year plan. In the first year, let us flush out the whole of North India from the Kafirs. And the second year, let us flush out the whole of South India from Kafirs. And then let both of us unite and divide this whole subcontinent among ourselves as an Islamic caliphate. Now, this is his own letter. It is no maybe, could be, this thing, it is written.
No assumption here.
Yeah, and in his own letters to various people, his functionaries, his commanders, he very proudly celebrates the fact that, he has converted 4 lakh Kafirs in Calicut to the true faith. So everywhere this invocation, Kafirs are infidels who do not belong to Islam. So both like the Hindus,
refugees.
Common Hindus, we are all Kafirs. In the Islamic theology, anybody who is not a Muslim is a Kafir or an infidel who is a non-believer of their way of life, that person is a kafir, and he deserves to be either killed or converted. If you convert, you are saved. If you don't convert, you deserve to be killed. So this is exactly how Tipu also gloats over the kind of massacres he does in various parts of South India, to the Nayars and Thia community in Malabar in North Kerala. So Calicut bore the maximum brunt of his fanaticism. You have in Kodagu in Karnataka, where the Kodavas who constantly gave him resistance, he dealt with them very, very strongly. And in one letter to one of his commanders called Zainul Abidin Shustri, he writes that not only the living prisoners in Kodagu, even the dead need to be converted to Islam. So even the dead bodies to be circumcised and converted to Islam. This is his own letter. I am not adding one word in it. It's verbatim. And so therefore in Coorg, even now, every year on 12th of December, they commemorate it as Martyrs' Day, because on that day he calls, in 1785, he calls several people to his to this place called Devati Param. It is in Kodagu, big Maidan type of a place, where he tells, for negotiation you please come, and come unarmed. And so they believe him and they come. And once they come unarmed, you know what happens, a mass slaughter there. Similarly, you have the Christians in Mangalore. A lot of these Christians, upwards of 60,000, 80,000 Christians, common people, who are laborers and farmers and all these people, many of them dragged, tied to the feet of elephant from Mangalore to Srirangpatna, about 300 kilometers, and pregnant women being made to march, many of them delivering babies on the way, the children and the mother, one of them dying, they not even having the ability to perform a funeral, and their corpses being eaten by jackals and dogs. And in fact, near Mangalore, there is this place called Nettaru Kere, which is in Tulu. I think Nettaru means blood. So blood, it's a blood-filled lake, because all these bodies were slaughtered and put there. And these people, 27 churches in Mangalore, destroyed. And these people forced to come to Srirangpatna and forced to be converted. If they don't convert, their noses and lips would be cut off, and they would be paraded on donkeys in Srirangpatna, and so on. And you had the Mandya Mayangars in Mysore, who 700 men, women and children of the Mandya Mayangar community ruthlessly massacred on the day of Deepavali, Naraka Chaturdashi, one day before Deepavali. So they were all called for a dinner feast in the Lakshmi Narasimha temple in Srirangpatna, and while they were in the middle of eating, most of the doors closed and elephants sent inside to trample all these people, and those who tried to escape, they were obviously killed. So 700 people massacred that way. And this Mandya Mayangar community, to this day, they do not celebrate Diwali when all of us in India do. They observe it as a day of mourning for their ancestors. So, in the weight of historical evidence that suggests all of this, as I said, his own letters, his manifesto of his kingdom, his father and he usurped the kingdom from from the Wodeyars. Hyder was still okay, he was tolerant of others. He was just, as long as he got his power, that's all mattered. But Tipu took over and became a supreme dictator, and also Islamized Mysore. So Mysore, which was a Hindu majority, our Karnataka, it became Sultanate Khudadad. It was a God-given kingdom. And Kannada was replaced with Persian as the court language. Names of places were all changed. Mysore became Nazarabad, Mangalore becomes some Jalalabad, Calicut becomes Firokhabad, all kinds of such names. Even coins with Persian numerals on it. And in that manifesto of his, he says the main goal of my Sultanate Khudadad is to annihilate the Kafirs and establish the true faith in this entire kingdom. He had a dream register where every night he would dream very vividly, and next morning he would spend about 2 hours in the toilet and recall all his dreams and note it down. And that dream register of his also is full of such violence, where suddenly some angel or prophet Muhammad or someone appears and says, go so far, break that temple, kill this fellow, all of this. And he used that as an inspiration to do what he did. So there is such a weight of historical information which goes completely contrary to the idea that we have been forced to believe is the truth about Tipu Sultan, and that is exactly what I've tried to dismantle with evidence in my book, latest book, Tipu Sultan.
But just listening to a few of your observations that you've written in the book, one's blood will boil. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how to even go through this book, and this is your latest book, Vikram. Shashi Tharoor says it's engaging and remarkably written. It is forwarded by S.L. Bhairappa sir. So we have multiple chapters: Hyder's rule, the ancestor of Hyder Ali Khan, first Anglo War. So one would obviously question, among so many books and data available out there about these kind of histories. What is the word I should be giving to this fellow? Very disturbing ruler. I mean, who's done all the atrocities to the land. What to expect from this book? 5 pointers that if you can help us coin.
Well, I don't like to give judgments on characters of the past. And I think the role of a historian also
is always to just present facts.
Present the facts and not box them. Who am I to judge a character of 18th century as good, bad, villain, hero? None of those. These are the things that happened, and my craft as a historian is trains me to go to the sources, ferret it from the archives, dusty, dark, dingy places, get all this out, put them in context, and present it to a reader.
Don't you get emotionally disturbed at all? Like some days you said, no? After listening to it, you came to the room.
Yeah, even this, I mean, all these tortures, when I also interviewed several people in Kodagu, in Kerala, in the Mandya Mayangars, and to listen to this, I went to that Lakshmi Narasimha temple in Srirangpatna where this thing happened apparently. It's not a easy thing you can't be so unemotional.
Right.
But I think that's the biggest punishment, I should say, that a historian has compared to a novelist, where a novelist can let your emotions run, in the narrative of what you write. But a historian is almost committed to an oath of objectivity, of trying to
bring the truth to light,
to somehow have an emotional disconnect after being so deeply marinating in that topic and the people.
Right.
It calls you to suddenly become a moral eunuch. You have to stand separate from it and just present it. The very word itihasa, which is a Sanskrit word, it translates to it thus happened. That's it. This is all that you need to do, and not take sides for or against. So I've presented all aspects of Tipu, and like any human being, he has some good sides also. He has some bad sides, as I would see it. So my idea in this book and through these 900 pages is to bring all these facets of his life, his rule, a contrast between him and his father. How were they different? What were the other players of the time? The Nizam, the Marathas, the British, the French, the Travancore rulers, the rulers of Malabar, of Coorg. What all were they doing? And how do you position him in this theatre of the 18th century? That is my main objective in this book. And I would let the reader make up her mind. After reading all of that, if you still think of the person as your hero, your role model, the freedom fighter, or whatever, it is fine with me. Hate or love someone, but let it be informed hatred or informed love, not blind support or blind opposition. Read about that person.
Let it not be an opinion of others you're blindly shopping.
Yeah, or rhetorical statements. So in this book also there are about 150 pages are only footnotes, citations. So for everything you say, there is a reference. There is something that you have drawn it from. So that's how I would like to present this book to the readers, that you should read it with an open mind and not with this preconceived idea that am I reading atrocity literature or anything. He's a fascinating character. He's a historian's enigma. And so,
as in, I mean, fascinating. Why?
the times are so fascinating. It's such a chaotic time in India, the 18th century, which ultimately led to the collapse of this country, to colonial power. So the fascinating way in which the various political players maneuver, their power play at that time, and how this man's mind works. In fact, his dream register, I got it psychoanalyzed with a psychiatrist, because dreams, they say, are the deepest index of your subconscious mind, right? What you dream about is what your subconscious mind is thinking all the time. So he's given us so much of material to delve not only into his political life but his mind. And the psychiatrist was like, this man is almost self-combusting with his hatred, and there's so much violence. You're thinking about violence and war all through in your living daylights and even in your sleep and dreams. You can imagine what that does to a person, right? And so it's a very, very very intense work of a person who ruled only for 17 years in Mysore, 1782 to 1799. The earlier era was of his father from 1760 to 82, and these 40 years are what are called the interregnum period, the interval where they usurp the throne from the Wodeyars. And after Tipu's death, the throne goes back to the Wodeyars, and that is how they come back. And that there, Lakshmi Ammanni, the Maharani, she plays a very important role. She's put in house arrest and captivity by Tipu Sultan, and all that she has is 1 hour in a day or something where she could go to this Kille Venkatramana Swami temple in the fort. While doing that, in the middle of the puja thali and all that, she would hide these letters, messages to the Peshwa or to the British in Madras, asking for help for her family to be rid of this problem. And the pujari would quietly, take it off from there, and then these letters would go all the way to Madras or to Pune for negotiations. So there are many such interesting characters in this theatre. And there's Onake Obawa, who comes in the middle in Chitradurga, and the way she, as a common watchman's wife, she manages to, Madhukari Nayaka's this thing, how she resists the invasion of Hyder Ali of the Chitradurga fort, which in that Kannada movie also Jayanti has Nagrahavu. Yes. So there are so many such very, very fascinating people of this time, which is what I would like the readers to, savor that it's a different era, different set of people. And like Hyder also, he comes from such normal background. His father is a commander in some Nawab of Sira's army, and he's killed in a battle when Hyder was only 4 years old. And he owed some money, the father owed some money to somebody else, and he had died without repaying it. And so to get that money back, this man, Abbas Quli Khan, whom he had given that money, he comes and raids the house of Hyder's father and loot whatever is there, molest the women and all that. And then these two children, Hyder is 4 and his elder brother Shehbaz, who's 8, he takes them also and puts them in this big nagadas, kettle drums, and they start beating on it, and these two boys faint inside the nagada. And in that pitiable condition, his mother somehow escapes from there, Majida Begum, and she goes all the way to Srirangapatna and then pleads with the Maharaja of Mysore, saying, please take pity on my fatherless children. They are suffering so much. Please give us some money. The Maharaja takes pity on them and pays off whatever debt was there. And he also gives a promise to the lady that once your children come of age, I'll take them into the Mysore army. Now, little did he know what he was getting into, because and he kept his word. So Hyder comes into the Mysore army in Devanhalli, in a battle of Devanhalli in 1749,
which
near
is
our
airport now.
That's where Tipu was born also the next year in 1750. And he, between 1749, when he enters the Mysore firmament, to 1760, which is about 11 years, in these 11 years, he manufactures such a situation of, Machiavellian tactics of running with the hare, hunting with the hounds, and overthrows the very benefactor who had paid him off as a young boy to, save his life, his and his mother and his brother's lives, and he usurps the throne and becomes the Sarvadhikari. So that is it's like a movie script waiting to be told and written in a nice way, in that honest, truthful way, not the Sanjay Khan way. But yeah, so that's what this book covers.
Amazing. So this has been read by Shashi Tharoor. As in, while you're writing books on such controversial topics,
Yeah.
do you face backlash from the political parties?
Oh, all the time. All the time. And not only political parties, it's everybody. And this happened not now, Rashmi, but when I was 26, when this Mysore book came, The Splendors of Royal Mysore. That time I was still, I was a babe in the woods, literally not knowing the landmines and sharks that are there in the field of Indian history writing, where everyone will take offense to everything. I was giving a lecture here in Bangalore on the interregnum period, on this 40 years of Hyder and Tipu. And the audience, which was still then very civilized, I was reading out letters of Tipu only, the ones that I mentioned. Convert even the dead. I converted 4 lakh infidels in Calicut. All these things. When I was reading that, a section of the audience suddenly erupted in protests, and paper rockets were thrown at the stage, and the organizers quickly, terminated the program, and I was taken to safety to the green room. But my poor father was sitting in the first row, and somebody came, some Tipu fan club or some such thing. They came and gave him one pamphlet and said, "You have only one son. If you want him to live long, please ask him to mind what he talks and what he writes in future." And so obviously that would have led to a huge hangama at home that night. And my bad luck, 2-3 weeks later, I think the Deccan Herald had commissioned a series with me on the Divans of Mysore. And the very first article came, it ended also with that, because that first article was on Purnaya, Diwan Purnaya, who was Hyder's Diwan, Tipu's Diwan, and also later of the Wodeyars when they came back. In that there were some references to Tipu Sultan, how Purnaya, despite him being the Diwan, his own niece was taken away to Tipu's harem. And then once in the middle of the court, Tipu tells this Purnaya, he's a Madhva Brahmin. He says, "You're so intelligent, why don't you convert and join us?" And Purnaya says, "Okay, Mahaswami, I'll do that." And he quickly goes away. And that time Tipu's mother is sitting in Parda. And so she comes out into the court and scolds him, saying that, "Your father never did such stupid things. You should take everyone along. If you do this type of thing, then people will lose their faith in you, and your end is near. So you better watch out." So these were things which were there in documents, and there were references. I had written that in that article. And that's why when Srirangpatna fell, Purnaya had turned traitor. So he was probably waiting for his opportunity to take revenge, which is natural. You can't even save your own niece, and you're forced to convert and all that. So there is a anger that brews. So for that there was a huge group of agitators at the Deccan Herald office in MG Road. They said, "Tell this fellow to give a apology." And the editor called me. I said, "No, over my dead body, I'm not giving any apology, because whatever I've written is based on facts and truth." And the editor then conveyed it to them. They said, "We'll give you double the space we gave him to write this article. You rebut it, with facts." But obviously the kind of characters who had come there were not the ones who were given to any kind of intellectual pursuits. So they made an effigy of mine and burnt it there at MG Road, right in the middle of the place. And they shouted some slogans and this, that, and went away. They had to do some.
Who are these guys controlled? I mean, who are...
I wish we knew. I mean, these are all hooligans. I don't know who are controlled by what. Some political interests. And the weaponization of history that happens so much, where today Tipu Sultan, if you talk about him, some people, some sections of society get affected. There is a backlash. You talk about Ambedkar, Phule, about Periyar, about Shivaji Maharaj. Lots of backlash comes because people have appropriated these characters of the past and made them their icon. They may not know anything about the person, but you're very touchy about any truth also being told about that person. So that editor actually sent me the photo. It was a very badly made effigy, to be honest. But she sent me a photo of the burning effigy. I was okay. I made it my Orkut profile. Those days Orkut was the only social media. So that was my DP for almost 2-3 months. I said, good only. I mean, it doesn't matter. But my mother used to keep very poor health. So she was very affected by all of this. And so she made me promise then that never in public you're going to write or talk about Tipu Sultan. Promise karo. And so when your mother tells you that, you can't do much. So I did that, and I kept the word to which I gave to her in 2008. We sadly lost her in 2018. And I thought after that the promise I made to the person, if that person herself is not there, then the promise is also invalid. And so that's how I broke the promise I made to her and wrote this book. With the hope that from whichever heaven she is in, she'll protect against any inconsequential, things that may happen by whoever. But touch wood, maybe her protection and blessings. People have received it well. The book has gone into several reprints already. Even before it was launched, it went into a second reprint. And I never thought people would, read such a thick, book, 950 pages. But people have been reading it. And their eyes are getting open to a new version of history that they never knew before.
Thanks to you, and more power to you. And now comes the next question. What's next?
Well, many things. One is, I've established a foundation called the Foundation for Indian Historical and Cultural Research, FIHCR.
What does it do?
It is to promote and foster new scholarship in Indian history, where I thought, I don't know, my own limited work, 10 books I've written in 17, 18 years. You don't know how much of life is left and how much more to do. There's lots to do. So can you create or patronize new scholars and writers who could bring the honest and truthful version of Indian history to the public? And so with that, we established this FIHCR, and it's largely been supported mainly as of now by Mr. Bhavesh Agarwal, the Ola founder. And I think he has very nationalistic ambitions and vision for what India as a nation needs to be in the cultural renaissance that we are seeing today.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of FIHCR, we have several initiatives. One is we have instituted a fellowship in the name of Sir Jadunath Sarkar, the very famous historian of pre-independent times,
Okay.
Nationalist historian. And through this, we open it for people to apply for this, and a very rigorous process went through. We got lots of applications, we interviewed them, and about 8 scholars were selected, and they're given a very liberal grant of about 15 lakhs over the course of 1 year of their fellowship with each, and with the idea that at the end of it they should come up with a publish worthy manuscript, which is a meticulously researched but accessible history which people can read, and we'll mentor them, help them get publishers also, which is also a very big challenge in India. The glass ceiling of publishing houses, that is very tough to break. So that is also something we're doing through this Jadunath fellowship. We also have one vertical where we form multidisciplinary teams in universities. Now, see, most of our history is written in languages we don't know. Sanskrit, Prakrit, Old Tamil, Persian, Arabic. We are relying only on translations, and these translations could either be faulty or maliciously translated. In Sanskrit, one word can have 4 or 5 meanings depending on the context. Now, for a modern historian to learn all these languages, it will take them one lifetime or few lifetimes. So in this multidisciplinary group, there are a language expert also who helps us go back to the primary sources, not depend on the translations, the original work. So we're doing one with the Nalanda University currently on the history of Buddhism in Bharat. So where we have a historian with an archaeologist, Sanskrit Pandits, Pali, Prakrit and Tibetan scholars, a Buddhist monk, all of us going and accessing the originals, and basis that we'll come out with a book series which will be well researched, but going to the primary resource. If itihasa is idu hige aitu, it thus happened, you have to go to what language it is written in to understand it. So this is one. So like this, we'll have several projects which we will run, and that will bring out more outputs. Another vertical is called Yuva, where we want to make history interesting and exciting for the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever you mentioned earlier.
Alpha and now beta.
Beta, theta, whatever comes, I don't know. But yeah, let them not be like me kneeling down outside class in history classes. Let it be an interesting thing. Talk to them in the language that they understand. If it is through Instagram Reels, if it is through 40-second is the attention span, in that can you plant an idea in their heads? Don't be preachy. Don't talk down to the youngsters. That's what I've realized, that you need to engage them in a conversation in a language they understand. So that's what Yuva will attempt to do through illustrated books. We all learned so much of our history outside school through Amar Chitra Katha, which we read. But we don't have that now. I think that's also been almost on its way out, the way it used to be then, when Uncle Pai was the one with Amar Chitra Katha. So that's what we're trying to do through animation videos, through the use of latest technology like AI and VR, virtual reality, where we've tied up with a company in Bangalore called Who We Are, and they create beautiful animation videos where you put on that VR headset and you get a tour of Brihadishwara temple or the Golden Temple, or how the Sharda Peeth would have been in what is now Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So a young child who will have an experience of all of this, naturally the curiosity, just curious being the motto of most young people, I think and there'll be an interest. I'm sure after seeing that beautiful video of Brihadishwara, a child is going to ask their parents, take me to Tanjavur next. Maybe after going there, they'll get disillusioned. That's another issue, the way our tourism is handled and the infrastructure. But there'll be an interest and curiosity in that era. Who built this? Why? What? So that's the thing we want to do through Yuva. And again, another...
So what is Yuva again?
Yuva is the vertical of FIHCR, which wants to make history accessible to youngsters.
Through your websites, or for now it is VR. Like, where can one come and experiences? Are there experience centers?
We are actually taking it to schools through this, and these books are already in the making. Some of these illustrated books through our social media handles. There'll be lots of Insta lives, and where an archaeologist will go to the site and show you what archaeology is all about. So subject matter experts who will talk to you. So I think these are the kind of things that we are trying to do through FIHCR. And allied to that, is another initiative which I've started with two friends, Sandeep and Shravan, and we have started a startup called NAAV AI. NAAV as in a boat in Hindi. Just as a boat goes from one shore to the other, this one will navigate. The full form of NAAV is navigating AI across vocabularies. So how do you translate content from one language, from English to Indian languages? Now, most of the content is in English.
We should try.
We should try that too. So how do we sound in our own voice in Assamese or Malayalam or something?
Or even in Kannada.
In Kannada, at some other point. So this is what we're trying to do. It's still in the building, where we're trying to translate content, textual content, voice content, video content into Indian languages, because I think 5% of India also understands and reads and consumes English. The rest of India lives in the Bharatiya Bhashas. So where there is no good content which gets created. So this is one loophole we're trying to, and that's a completely different organization. FIHCR is another organization. So these two, and my own work and travel and talks, and I all the time, and lit fests and talking there, traveling every week almost to some city or the other. It's plate is full, so there's no time for anything. But I must say that even this purpose that came through, it happened very serendipitously. During the second wave of COVID, almost 4 years ago, this was 2021, I was very badly affected by that during the Delta wave, I think. And I was in the ICU for 3.5 weeks, and the doctors had given up all hope of survival, and they'd asked my family to just leave it on God and pray. And those 3.5 weeks of isolation, of literally seeing people drop down dead like flies next to me, the person on the left and the right died in front of my eyes. And your whole outlook to what life is there a purpose or mission to it? Does personal glory only matter, or are you sent? If I survived that and came out, there must have been some larger purpose which someone thought I had to still fulfill. Otherwise, if I were useless to the universe, there was no need for me to survive that ordeal and come back. So that actually change so much in life. Your outlook to life, your outlook to relationships, your outlook to people, to purpose, everything takes a 180-degree shift.
Absolutely.
And that's when I kept thinking that I need to go beyond what I have done, my books, this, that. You do need to leave behind some small footprints on the sands of time and legacy and so on. So maybe other than my own work, being very selfish about what you are doing, I thought these are areas where you can contribute to the country without necessarily wading through the toxic, muddy waters of politics, and actually contribute probably more tangibly to the national life and leave some legacy behind. So that's how both these organizations slowly mushroomed, and I should see how they'll grow.
I mean, wishing you more power and peace and everything that comes along as a byproduct. And until next time, thank you so much, Vikram. How was it for you? I mean, we discussed everything. Last question is, somebody who's written a book on Shiva and all of that, I assume that you are a believer in God. Or should I call it the unknown with no names painted?
Yeah, that would probably be more being an agnostic, which is what is the essence of our country's philosophy, Rashmi. I mean, you have the Nasadya Sukta, which is probably the among the verses of the oldest scripture of the world, if not, and of Hinduism and of India, the Rig Veda. In that, the Nasadya Sukta, it makes all these claims, that the world was created by somebody, and he's the one who sits as a ruler in some, heavens, so many thousands of miles away. He knows everything. He controls everything. And then it ends with, does he really know? Does anybody know whether he knows? Nobody knows. So this questioning, right? We are never a nation of believers. We are a nation of seekers. So everyone's journey, that's why when we say, oh, we are a polytheistic nation, you can look at it that way, that why do we need 33 crore or what, so many gods and goddesses? This is a very personal journey of every individual. So it's not like a herd of sheep who will be led by, this thing. But each person's journey becomes so individualistic. Your communication with God is individual. If you don't believe in God also, it is allowed. That is what, there is no concept of blasphemy in the Indian philosophy, in Hindu philosophy. You can do ninda stuti of God also. Most of our bhakti poets, they give galis and scold God, in that ecstasy of bhava, in that ecstasy of bhakti. So in a country like that, where everything is allowed, there's no blasphemy, you don't roast in hellfire if you, don't follow this or don't do this. I think we need to go back to that original essence of what this sacred land actually propounds. Multiple opinions need to flourish. And so that's why even with God, there is no certainty. When our oldest scripture has said nobody knows, does he also know? Nobody knows. So it's good to be in that agnostic space. Because see, I mean, a believer is also very sure. An atheist is also very sure. One believes that there is God. The other believes there is no God. I think that truth is in the middle. And I'd always, whether it comes to history, whether it comes to my own spiritual outlook to life, I would like to be in this fuzzy logic in the middle, where there are multiple shades, more shades, more than 50 shades of grey maybe, which is where I think the truth somewhere lies, and not in this black and white in which we compartmentalize people, our beliefs, our thoughts, characters of the past. I think we need to flourish in this interval which is where the truth is usually found.
Like, to the popular opinion wherein people don't vouch for gray area, you're saying don't even call it gray, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
There is an unknown area,
Yes.
where most of it thrives.
And make that your journey of discovery. Your approach will be different from mine. So let it be. You're also right. As that phrase goes, na neti neti, na iti na iti. This is not the final word. This is certainly not the end of it. So you find something else which will enrich the discussion and debate. That's why discussion, debate, dissent, difference of opinions were always allowed and nurtured in this.
Because that was where growth happened.
Yeah.
Otherwise, stagnation.
Stagnation. Yeah, you're stuck in some 8th century book, which doesn't foresee what the world is going to be in the 21st or 22nd century. So I think that is what we have somewhere lost in our country, and I hope we go back to our roots, and that is what is going back to the ethos of this country actually would mean.
Well said. We spoke about everything apart from two things, which is a quintessential of a podcast. Like, who funds your discoveries and your
self-funded?
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
I mean, your quest in searching for proof and then writing the truth.
Yeah,
representing the truth.
It's all been self-funded, and at least now I can still manage to do that. But I must say, we came from a lower middle class family, literally, trying to make ends meet. My parents, both of whom were working in a bank. My father going away on a transferable job that he was across various cities just to ensure that I got good education and studied well. My mother also taking all the hardships. But neither of them, ever thought twice when I asked for so many books. Books and classical music, they were my companions right from childhood. And this self-funded journey to Mysore, anybody could have said half the time in history class you're found kneeling down. In PTA meetings, I have to listen to the history teacher scolding you. Now you want me to finance going to Mysore, and what is it going to get you? Is it going to get you better grades? Will it get you a good job? Nothing. They unconditionally supported this quest. They became a part of it, where every vacation they would also, poor things, we would sit in one KSRTC bus and go all the way to Mysore, and they were part of this entire journey throughout. When I look back, it's so much of gratitude that you have, that and they funded my education. I did my engineering in electronics and a master's in mathematics from BITS Pilani. Then I did an MBA in finance from SP Jain, and I had a well-paying corporate job. And in the middle of all of it, I just on a whim decided I'm going to drop it after 9 years of being in it and do what my heart spoke for, my passion.
With some savings, or you just...
With a bit of savings, obviously.
Oh, okay.
So that gave me the courage to leave it. But even then, a lot of parents even today would say, what is this? Who does this? So much we have spent on educating you.
Right.
Not even once were my parents, telling that. They were like, if this is what gives you happiness, we want to see you happy. And there is one life. One should not die with regrets. I wish I had done this. Or try it. So I also, when I gave up my job, I thought I'll give it a chance and a trial for 2-3 years. I may fail. Nobody may read my books, or nobody may listen to what I have to say. Then my resume is still there. I've taken a sabbatical for 2 years. I've followed my passion. I've given my passion a chance. If it fails, I have my education, my certificates to take me back into the job that I was there in, with the satisfaction that I tried. I may have failed, but at 70, 75, I'm still alive. I wish I had done this. I wish I had done this.
You don't die with regrets.
MS Sublakshmi's Kurai Undrum Millai. So you don't want to have any regrets in life. So that is what, inspired me since then. And I think, my parents then, and then now it is my own savings and funds and whatever comes from the sale of books that fund me. But I am ensuring that other scholars don't go through this. So this 15 lakhs that goes to all these scholars to write the books, to this day nobody gives me that money to write my book, which is a different thing, which is a good thing. I'm glad that at least you're helping foster a new generation of scholarship.
Because today you are probably, if you are self-sufficient, at least you're thinking of the next line.
Yes.
Who can represent the country, who can unearth the hidden stories and the truth
Yeah,
to be told.
that's true.
So out of curiosity, I mean, a book like this, to bring it on the table, the print and all of that, what kind of monies does it take? I'm not sure. I mean, if it is a direct gun to your head, but I don't know how you want to take
I
this.
don't know, maybe a couple of lakhs, because you have to, there's so much of effort that goes into
The
travel,
time,
the research, even getting, I mean, if you have to go to London, stay there for a month to access the archives, then photocopy things, get a translator,
right?
if it's all in languages you don't understand, then, put things together. You need an illustrator, you need someone who will draw maps for you. And then take it to the publisher. So yeah, and it takes a couple of years. It's not just a 6-month project. It takes more than this. Took me about 4 or 5 years to this Tipu Sultan book.
So while
But
you're giving 4-5 years to a particular book, you're not working on any other projects?
no, usually no. But I'm doing all these talks and lectures, and a lot of that also helps subsidize the research, which is a good part. So everything is then plowed back into creating more. And now, yeah, with the institutionalization with FIHCR, I hope, at least there is a platform for those who are truly interested and whose conscience is clear about how they want to present the past to our future. I think at least there is a platform which I didn't have then, I don't have even now. So even now, if I need help with somebody, there is really nobody to support that way. I mean,
So
ask
you
for
have to fund
guidance.
it your own self, and
Yeah.
you have to have the associations with the publishers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
like
now it's slightly easier.
contracts, like because since you
Yeah.
have a reputation, you have
Yes.
given
Yeah. Yeah.
successful books.
Yeah. Now it's slightly easier. Yeah. But I was very lucky there too. I think right from my first book, which was published by a national publisher, Rupa and Company then, my first 3 books were with them. And I was very sure that I wanted that story of Mysore also, the first book, with a national publisher. I didn't want it to become some local story here. I wanted people outside Karnataka to know about Namma Mysuru and what it did. What is the Karnataka ethos? They should know. So that can be done only if it's a national publisher. So I was lucky to get them then. And later on, of course, Penguin, Random House India, which is one of India's internationally leading publishers. The Savarkar books, the Tipu Sultan, one other called Brave Hearts of Bharat, they published. And I wrote one with Blue One Ink, a very nice new publishing. It's a startup. So I love people who have that passion to start something. And Blue One Ink has its heart in the right place. And so they published Waiting for Shiva, Unearthing the Truth of Kashi's Gyanvapi, on the history of the Kashi Vishwanath temple. So yeah, I've been...
mosque and the...
Yes. I did a full-length interview in Suvarna News with Ajit Hanumakkanavar. They kept calling me for several months, and I kept saying no, I don't want to do. I was not confident whether I can talk with such fluency in Kannada, because I've never studied the language in school or at home. Also, as I said, it's a different multilingual setup that I come from. But I know Kannada very well. But to engage in a proper conversation, I was very diffident. But I went ahead, and finally last year or something, he made me come for it. That video just went viral, and 2 interviews I think I did with him. One before the Ram Mandir Pran Pratishtha at Ayodhya, and one on the Waiting for Shiva thing. And even to this day, after 1.5 years, in small towns, Udupi or Karkala, somewhere, Hubli, wherever I go, so many people have not even heard my English podcast, but this particular thing in Kannada, they have all heard. Similarly, Hindi ones, what I've done there, small towns in UP, Bihar, and Hindi, of course, has a wider reach. It just takes you so much more, across to the people who matter, whose minds need to be, I think, changed. So a lot of, I think, English speakers, we've already frozen our thought processes very deeply. So that's also a reason we need to get good quality content in Indian languages.
Indian
languages.
Yeah. Thank you, Vikram.
Thank you.
Before I say bye to you, it's a tradition, we give a book to all the guests who
how
come.
nice.
person who's representing such treasure through his writing. I am giving a book to you
So
now.
nice. For something I
know,
need, psychology of money.
You would need this?
I
mean,
guess
I was
so.
just trying to understand what your choice would be, but since you've already
I think my
made a choice.
mindset I've already mastered.
Yes. So while I sign this for you, Vikramji, could you please nominate 3 personalities we should host on Just Curious to explore their journey and the field that they represent?
Oh my God. That is a googly of a question. I've just gone blank. I'm getting all historical characters, not anybody of today. And you've already done people like Sheila and others.
Yeah, special thanks to Sheila
Yeah.
for, bridging.
Sheila Bajaj.
Sheila Bajaj for bridging our session.
Yes.
And thank you. So I've written, Dear Vikramji, wishing you
Drop the
amazing...
G.
Wishing you amazing personalities and may the divine guide and protect you.
Thank you.
P.S. One day I want to kidnap your memory.
Oh, bapre.
I'm like
Thank you.
in awe of your memory. This episode was powered by Polar Bear, the Ice Cream Sundae Zone. All you mango fans, now that the Mango Mania seasonal special is on, wondering which outlet to go? They have 160 outlets to choose from. Turn the maps on and search for your nearest Polar Bear outlet. So guys, that was Vikram Sampath. Truly living up to his second name. He is definitely a treasure of facts that he has dug into the the pages of history, which mostly has not been represented, right? So do let us know in your comment section as to what part of a conversation really touched you. Which book of his have you read? Are you going to buy, e-buy, or whatever works for you all? And I hope we've gotten a little sneaker peek into the mind behind the pen, which has always spoken to us through his books. Until next time, thank you, Vikramji.
Thank you.
Vikram Aure, Vikram sir. Wishing you lots of love and energy
Thank you so much.
for all your pursuit ahead.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.